From the John DeVita Broadcast Center, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another broadcast of Armchair Experts with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network. And now, here is Jim and Rich.
Off and running. Another edition of the Armchair Experts, Leon and Massaro, like it or not. The award-winning Rich Massaro, he's wearing his camouflage shirt today. I can't see him. I don't know where he is. Any more awards this week?
None this week.
None this week? It's a quiet week for you. I don't know how you're going to manage to get through.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah, what have you been awarded for about lately? Just for the fact that your longevity and you keep showing up at board meetings.
That's what it is. I think more than anything. I was fortunate. They surprised me. The board and the administration surprised me last Monday night. Mike McAuliffe was there and awarded me a certificate from the Illinois State House of Representatives. And then,
what did the certificate say?
I don't know. I didn't read it. Thanks. I said thanks, Mike.
You owe more taxes now, or something.
That must be it. Then at the end of the meeting, Dr. Lupo surprised me. He had a couple of letters. One from Mike Quigley, who's our state rep in Washington, and letters from both U.S. senators congratulating me on. Oh, well, actually, you guys could be included on this because our broadcasts were mentioned as well.
Wow! So. Hey, wow! We even made it.
So
John DeVita's in there in the room spinning the dials, trying to make us sound intelligent. We even made the beat. We even get the mention, John. We're just basking in the glow of his reflected honor.
That's right.
Well, we're very happy to hear that. At least somebody is thinking about us.
Yeah, somebody is, for sure.
You know, we don't
know if any listeners are thinking about us, but somebody is.
They could be thinking about us, wondering, what are you two doing? So you all
by the way, speaking of listeners...
Oh, we have one?
No, actually, I don't think he listens, but a wannabe listener, Harvey. Jim rejected Harvey's suggestion. John, I saw Harvey. I don't think he ever met Harvey. And I don't even know Harvey's last name. But he's
Harvey.
A guy who hangs in the neighborhood, let's put it that way. And he suggested that we do a segment on this show about, and Jim is looking at it right now, the tiny print and the box scores in the Sun-Times.
I don't know. I think Harvey needs to just get a new prescription.
You know, Jim, though, you do remember when they shrunk that thing way down not that long ago. So,
True. True, or maybe...
I was sort of, actually, I think I might have offhandedly mentioned this once on the broadcast. Just
I think you might have complained about it, and I'd probably...
Because it's ridiculous.
I probably just
Why have it at all? You can't read it.
I think that's going to be the next thing. That's going to disappear at some point in time.
Yeah.
Because I just don't know how meaningful it is to a lot of people in this day and age. You have
how can you be a baseball fan without seeing the box scores?
Well, that's true.
Although I don't look at them myself anymore.
Well, okay, all
but
right.
I'm not really a baseball fan that much anymore.
No, I know you're a World Cup fan, and you're into.
Okay, that's enough talk about the World Cup. Let's move on to something else.
I know the problem. What happened on Sunday?
They scored a goal and tied the game.
Well, Chris Conte was playing defense. No, wait a minute.
Poor Chris Conte.
Wait a minute. That was wrong.
We're going to summon
football.
His grandfather from the grave to reprise his role in The Godfather, and you're going to be. You're going to end up like Luca Brasi.
Your question last night regarding the games last night: Reds 6, Cubs 1, Orioles 6, White Sox 4.
Who did Samardzija? I think Orioles beat the White Sox 6-4. Was it?
Yeah.
Did Sale start that game? I'm pretty sure he did.
I think he might have. And as far as the Cubs,
well, it might have been Samardzija. Was it
Samardzija, 6 innings, 1 run, 4 hits. Rondon was the culprit. He gave up 5 runs.
Why do we even have a bullpen? Why don't
I mean,
John, do you remember when we were young guys? They probably had 8 or 9 pitchers on the staff. Now they got like 12 or 13, and they still can't do anything but give up runs.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, everybody. Schlitter pitched 1 inning, 13 pitches. Strope of all people, 1 inning, 24 pitches. Of course, he walked 2. Rondon, 2/3 of an inning, 5 runs, 4 hits, walked 1, and Russell came in and cleaned it up.
As it was described in a book I just read, and obviously you know this, Jim, because you've followed the game a long time. But it used to be 4 starting pitchers.
Yep.
And then 4 or 5 guys that were in the bullpen that, in the words of the author that I read, were trying to straighten themselves out or find themselves or whatever
They needed
whatever
to find
vernacular
them.
he
Yeah,
used.
They needed to find themselves.
And they were having problems, maybe physical or just not being able to maybe control wise, and they'd be in the bullpen
Yeah, until they solved their problem.
until they solved their problems. So
And there would be times, you can go back and look at the line over the years and look at Jenkins back in his day, and you might see 42 starts. You might see 2 relief appearances too, at some point in time where he had to be used.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
And you asked about the White Sox. Sale pitched last night, 6 innings, 11 hits, 2 runs. Who was the big culprit there? Looks like Belisario was the big culprit there, giving up 3 runs. He must have got. I assume he got the loss.
When we first started watching baseball, there were 16 teams, and there were probably, let's just say they had, for the sake of talk, 9 pitchers. So that would be, 100 and some pitchers, 130, 140 some pitchers in the league. Now you're talking 30 teams or so. What is it, 30?
Yeah.
And you're talking maybe, okay, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say 12 pitchers. So you're talking, more than twice that amount.
I'll help you with the math.
And, 12 times 30 would be,
360.
360. And 9 times 16 is 4 carry 5, 140, 144 or whatever.
Basically, twice and then some pitchers.
So I guess the point would be, what is the quality going to be? You go from a fairly elite group to a pretty general group.
I mean, I think we saw the state of the game back in the initial days in the early '60s when they finally expanded.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody started complaining at that point in time, and you have to consider the first expansion was only in the American League, and everybody complained about the dilution of talent then.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And you were only going from 8 to 10 teams that year.
Well, when you talk about pitchers, I think I mentioned this to you, and just thinking about, I know what made me think of it. You mentioned Fergie Jenkins, and Fergie was, guy who was known for finishing what he started, and I think I had mentioned to you when we had a conversation on the phone. I'm reading the new biography of Brooks Robinson,
Mm-hmm.
and they were talking about what did they call them? The baby birds, or were they? What was that young pitching staff that they had back when Milt Pappas was around?
I don't remember the nickname for
Can't
him.
think
but
what they used to call him.
Yeah.
But he describes how Jerry Walker, who was one of those guys, pitched 16 innings and threw 188 pitches. And Harry the Cat Burkeen, was the pitching coach, and he said, "Well, that wasn't that many pitches for the number of innings he threw." And then I think you figured it out, or somebody figured it out. It said, yeah, it's only about, 12 pitches an inning.
12 pitches an inning.
So he was very efficient. But
Yeah.
they would not, what?
That would
I
be,
think
oh my God, they'd be, they'd get to the 6th inning.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we got to get them out of there.
Yeah. I think the author's point, Jim, was today's pitching coaches or managers or whatever the powers that be, if you did that with a pitcher today, that'd be it. You'd probably be fired the next day if you're the manager.
Oh my gosh, we can't have that. We can't have that. We've got all this money invested in him.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Hey, now you didn't watch the whole. I don't want to get into that. Forget about that.
No, go ahead.
I was
going
to ask you. There's been more talk in the paper about. Actually, I'm enjoying the baseball conversation, but there's been more talk.
We'll get back to baseball
about,
in a minute.
Carmelo Anthony, and just wanted to see what your thoughts were on that. You have a pained
I have
expression
a
on your
pained
face.
expression on my face because I'm just. Why do I think this is going to be Carlos Boozer revisited?
Well, it'll be better than Carlos Boozer in one sense. I think you're talking about a guy who can pretty much
Who can actually
at
shoot?
will shoot and score. I mean, he's a pure shooter. I'd say.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that you could apply that term to Carlos Boozer, or probably the only guy that you could say that about on the Bulls. I don't know if he's still under contract. Would be Jimmer Fredette. He's a pure
No,
shooter.
he's toast. I think
And
he's toast.
Carmelo Anthony would be a pure shooter. Now, the other guy they're talking about, I mentioned to you the other day, is Aaron Aflalo, who's and been in the league for a while. I didn't realize this guy had been in the league as long as he is. He's 28 or 29. I think he started out with the Nuggets. I think he made another stop. I can't think of who it was with, the Knicks maybe or somebody like that, and then the Magic. And I had said to you that he was a point guard, which was wrong. I looked at him.
He's a two guard.
He's a two guard, sort of a swing guy,
Yeah.
and 6'5", forward guard.
Okay.
I guess he can shoot.
And I guess they need shooters because obviously you finish last in the league in scoring. You got to start putting some points on the board because there's going to be nights when your defense is just not going to be effective. I guess the question I'd ask about Anthony is he going to change to fit into Tibbs, or is Tibbs going to change to fit into him?
Well, so far from what I've seen, I don't think Tibbs changes. So I guess it would have to be the first. He'd have to change to fit in with Tibbs.
And that ain't going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen either.
I don't think that's going to happen at all.
The mindset of people in sports today, though, especially a lot of the guys who write it. In the Trib yesterday, the one of the columnists, I don't know if it was, I don't want to say who it is because I'm going to have the wrong name and identify the wrong guy, but it was the columnist that wrote the article or the story about Anthony possibly coming to the Bulls. And his big reasoning for Anthony taking advantage of free agency was that I guess Carmelo is coming up to the point where he's going to be 30, and this will be his last big opportunity to get a big contract. Not that he wants to go someplace where he could win, but the big thing is getting the big contract. As if he hasn't had enough big contracts already.
That's the ego of the game.
Yeah.
Everybody's, you're
Now,
measured.
this is not.
You're measured.
This isn't Anthony's reasoning or words. This is the writer's reasoning.
I think the mindset of so many of these people, so many of these ball players, is you're measured by the amount of your contract, not by what you've done, because the egos are so tremendous. Despite the criticism that he's gotten over the years, I'm sure if you ask LeBron James, you're making a lot of money. How do you feel about that? And he goes, well, it's okay. I'm comfortable. I can provide for my family, but I'm happier with what I can produce on the court.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Carmelo Anthony his first thought is I can make a lot of money. That's just my own view, and honestly, yeah, I mean that's the nature. I think that's the nature of the players in the sport. My own view.
Yeah.
My own view.
Well, I just think that it would probably not be a good fit, but the sports writers seem to love it. Now, I don't know if they love it because they actually have a clue and think that this will work, or they'll love it because of the controversy that it will probably spark.
Oh, if he comes to Chicago, there's going to be it's going to be a lot of controversy, and a lot of people think they're right on top of the list here. The Bulls.
I don't know. They may be. The other thing is on this is. Actually, though, Anthony, although he hasn't had success team-wise in terms of his teams going deep into the playoffs as a pro, he was on a national championship winning team in college.
Yeah, Syracuse.
So it's not like he's totally, without merit in terms of having some kind of winning background. So I don't know. And I really don't know. I think he maybe only played 1 year. Jim Boeheim, I'm sure, is not a coach that tolerates a lot of stuff. So, maybe he can fit in with the Bulls. I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of that idea. Although I don't know where else they would go if they don't go for a big name free agent. Now,
I don't know. I don't know you. I don't know. You still think they should go after Rudy Gay?
Rudy Gay. I know you're not a big gay guy, so yeah, you just wanted somebody to say that this morning. That's on your mind.
I just wanted that line.
He came from, He came from the Southern residents. John, and he's, I don't know. He's got other things on his mind this morning.
I don't know.
He doesn't seem like he's focused in.
He's
got a big smile on his face.
I'm not focused at all today. I just suddenly
look at him. He's paging through a magazine as we're talking here.
I'm looking for something relating to the NBA draft.
Oh, you are.
Yes.
So and what is it? I just saw that the Bulls might be talking about trading up.
I saw
to
that.
number 8. Who the heck were they talking with?
That's what I want to find out.
Yeah.
Don't
take too long finding it out.
Talk amongst yourselves. I'll be with you in a moment.
Well, John,
you and John chat. You and John chat for a bit. You haven't seen each other for a couple of weeks.
John, do you remember when Bob Luce used to have the wrestling show on, and he'd have Pepper Gomez, and Pepper Gomez used to say that he has the world's strongest stomach, and they actually had the Volkswagen run over his stomach.
Right, I remember that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I actually remember as a kid, because I was big into wrestling. I think it was Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine. Mm-hmm. There was a picture, I'll never forget it, of Pepper Gomez on the front with a blue background behind him. And I'll tell you, Pepper Gomez, he was a Chicago local favorite, John.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't the wrestling matches at the Marigold Gardens?
Yeah, I think
those were the early days in the
I think they had them at
the early 50s. The Marigold.
Yeah. The amphitheater was another site that they used.
Yes, yeah, and probably the old Coliseum too.
Yeah, I don't remember the old Coliseum at all.
I was there at the old Coliseum. I was there several times because my dad's boss was a polo player.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did he have a Palapany?
He had a Palapany.
He had a Palapany?
Yeah,
a string of Palapanis?
He had a string of Palapanis.
He had his horse, and
John's ignoring you.
and we used to go to and he used to give my dad the tickets, and we used to go to the Coliseum to watch him play polo.
Wow,
mm-hmm.
Man, that you know what? I remember years ago I had a friend that really a lady friend that was a good athlete, and she loved sports, and she had talked me into going to out to Oak Brook to see a polo match. And the day we were supposed to go, we had bad weather, and she had this little sporty car that we were going to go in. And that same day, a tornado touched down right near Oak Brook, right where we would have been, and we were thanking our lucky stars that we didn't even venture that way. So I've never that would have been my closest to coming to see a polo match. I really would like to see one. You got to be. I think the skill level is real high there. So.
Of course, the Coliseum isn't there anymore, is it?
I doubt
no,
it.
that's long gone. I think the Bulls played there for
they might have. Somebody played there. Yeah.
And I'm trying. No, it was the amphitheater that the auto show moved to when McCormick Place burned down.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, when they did that.
So, Jim, did you find what you're looking for?
Yes, actually, I did.
John and I had a segue here.
You segued nice.
John and I could segue into a lot of things.
We
could talk about his Al Melgard album that's sitting on the shelf over here.
And to go into that, and we even touched Leon Barry today too.
Well, I have to say though, John, and I love
you
Al Melgard, but Al Melgard, you are not Al Melgard's biggest fan. He's probably your biggest fan because I think you're the only man in the city who bought his album. So
well, Al doesn't really say too much nowadays.
I know he's not around.
Yeah, he's looking at the stars.
That's right. That's right. You asked who was who had the 8th pick. If they were talking about trading up, and that's Sacramento.
Sacramento, that's right.
Now, if they target the player that this mock draft here in Sports Illustrated has, they are looking at possibility of Julius Randle being available from Kentucky.
Oh, he's Kentucky. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, who was the guy that was at Kansas? That was Embiid.
Embiid. Embiid, who's knee surgery. Knee surgery?
Yeah, that's right. They say okay.
Knee
Because
surgery.
he was going to be the everybody's consensus #1 pick.
Right, and now a lot of people are saying because of him being out, going in for surgery, a lot of people are saying now Jabari Parker
Well,
could be the #1 pick.
do you think that a lot of people are really jazzed about pro basketball in Chicago at this point in time? I mean, other than your diehard Bulls fans, is anybody else in the city really
I don't
care about pro basketball right now?
I think it's gonna, I think it could be likened to the old days, of the Hawks before they went into the down years and came back. That there were, 16,000, because the attendance at the old Chicago Stadium was always 16,666. I always used to say there's 16,666 hockey fans.
It's
I think there's 21,000 basketball fans. I'm just, I hate to say this, I'm just not an NBA fan anymore.
Yeah, well, you know what? I think the fact that we're, I hate to say this, that we're getting old and crotchety, we're not fans of a lot of things. I think what we become...
We're not fans of being old and crotchety.
We become, both you and I have agreed that, we like hockey. Hockey is really, gets you pepped up, and we like it. And, we talk football. I think football's always pretty interesting. Baseball and basketball have slipped down on the list. Now, not as far as World Cup soccer ever, but they've slipped down pretty far. So but basketball, I mean, it's still.
And I'm not big. I texted you yesterday. I'm not a big fan on tennis either.
If the Bulls would get Carmelo Anthony, do you think that would really energize more people about basketball?
That would stir some interest. There would be a positive. I think there would be a positive vibe just because of it's Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah,
they're paying him a lot of money. He must be good.
Yeah. Well, they thought the same thing about Ben Wallace, and here comes John with his Al Melgard album.
There you go. This is
Melgard.
Let's pass that over.
Yeah, I want to see. Hold on, I got to look and see if there's a picture on the back.
No
pictures.
No pictures. I know there is another one where he is. There's a picture of him playing the stadium organ. There's another album I've seen over the years of him there. I know, John. John, I think we should have a new theme song. Side A here, Hot Foot Blues.
I was going to say,
or the clarinet polka. Which do you like?
Are there? I didn't know if they would have actual cuts or if Al just played continuously on each side, and just like at the stadium. But there are cuts. Okay.
Oh, the Hot Foot Blues is an original Melgard song.
All right.
Al is a composer of note.
I'll tell you what, Al Melgard, you can't knock him though. Him and Nancy Faust at the old Sox Park. I mean, hey.
Nancy Faust, did Nancy Faust succeed him? Yeah, Nancy Faust may have succeeded him.
Anybody who could play the organ, I mean, that's not an easy thing to do. Jim, didn't you play piano or organ?
No, I played the organ.
You played the organ,
and I still got it in the basement. I haven't touched it in 15 years.
Well, he doesn't play the organ anymore. Put that in the safe spot, will you?
Yes, please.
So it doesn't.
So
fall,
we don't break it,
and we don't break John's album. Here, we'll put it on a level, almost level spot on the table.
Yeah.
And where were we at?
I forgot. We segued off to Al Melgard.
Segue to Al Melgard. This is really scintillating radio today.
Who do you think if this particular draft has them forecast taking if they take their picks at 16 and 19, P.J. Hairston, a shooting guard out of the D League. The comments are the 6'5" ex-Tar Heel put up big numbers, 21.8 points per game for the Texas Legends.
Well, at least he's got one thing going for him. He's an ex-Tar Heel, so he probably has an idea of how to play basketball.
Mm-hmm.
He played for Roy Williams.
Roy Williams. Now the other guy I think might be a good fit if they do wind up keeping their draft. KJ McDaniels, small forward from Clemson, a crafty shot blocker, the 6'6" McDaniels will fit into Chicago's D-first culture. Now he would be a good fit.
Yeah, I'm not trying to knock the guys who try to predict the drafts or these things, because to me, I wouldn't even begin to know how to do it. So my hat's off to them for even trying. But I'd like to know. I mean, how the heck? You're talking about guys that I've never heard of, and I'm not following college basketball all that much, but at least I know the top names. And these guys are guys I've not ever heard of up to this point. So no wonder basketball interest is falling off. There's no big, it's getting like baseball. How many big names are there? You have some that are in the NBA right now, and not all that many. But you don't have that. Even the top guys from college don't elicit much response as far as I'm concerned, because I don't know who the heck they are most of the time, and they're not really around in college long enough to.
And I was just going to say,
a reputation of any type.
You're going to have in the instance here, Jabari Parker, who may wind up being the number one pick in the draft. Now,
well, he's the biggest name to me because obviously we're familiar with him because he's local.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether the fact that he was a good high school player and did well, I guess, in his one season in college, makes him NBA ready, I don't know. The one thing he does have going for him, though, is that his father was an NBA player and an outstanding basketball player in his own right. So if he's listening to his father and his father is guiding him correctly, then maybe he is ready because his father should know. Mm-hmm. So that would be an important consideration. But I can see, Jim, why you would say, you're not all that jazzed about basketball, pro basketball anymore, because there's really, you got LeBron, you had the nice San Antonio Spurs story. I'm trying to think, of course we follow the Bulls because they're our local team. But even the Bulls, I think you alluded to the fact before. You said at one time when the Hawks were sort of in purgatory, you had 16,000 people coming to the stadium. You have 21,000 people now coming to the United Center. But other than that, I don't know that they're generating a whole lot of interest in the city. I think the sports writers are trying to do it, but I just don't see anybody saying, "Oh, geez, what are the Bulls going to do?"
What did the Bulls do? I think it really, I guess after Michael left, I probably came to the conclusion that, gee, maybe maybe I'm not a basketball fan. Maybe I was a Michael Jordan fan.
Well, plus it's a really hard act to follow, and you're not going to get too many guys who can perform at that level over such a long period of time. That's the definition of a true star athlete. One of these days, Jim, we should have the conversation about. I know that you've said it's not the Hall of the Very Good, but
it's not the Hall of Fame. It's the Hall of the Very Good.
Well, no, you said it should not be the Hall of the Very Good.
Right.
It should be the Hall of Fame.
Right.
I was thinking the other day about take a franchise like the Braves. You have some guys who are on top of the mountain, like Henry Aaron, Warren Spahn, Greg
Eddie
Maddux.
Matthews, Greg Maddux.
But I would say this now. Those guys are, and this is not to say downgrade Eddie Matthews or the other guy I was going to mention, Tommy Glavine. Those guys are great players. They belong in the Hall of Fame, but they're not the iconic status of the first three guys. Those guys are legendary. Michael Jordan is legendary. Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig are legendary. But who would be a good example? Roger Maris is legendary for a season or two, but he's not legendary in the same sense as a DiMaggio or a Mantle or a Ruth or Gehrig.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that would be an interesting conversation to have. What are the gradations there of legendary versus great and Hall of Fame worthy, but not legendary?
Interesting thought. That's something we actually have to look at the numbers too. By the way, you mentioned something, just triggered something as we're coming up to the bottom of the hour and take a break. You mentioned Maddux, Glavine, and Smoltz. I threw Smoltz's name in there. Do you know Tony Gwynn hit over 380 against them?
Tony Gwynn was he probably was the greatest hitter of the, if you want to call the modern era, say from 1980 forward. He was probably the greatest hitter of that 30 or 40 year span.
Great quote from Maddox talking about as hitters get older, you're able to fool them. He said, except for that effing Gwynn.
Well, here's another thing. As I read the stories about Tony Gwynn after his death, everybody said what a great and happy guy he was. And my contention is that I'm not going to say that you don't have your sour apple, but most of your great players and great performers are, by and large, they find joy in the game. And they play in a joyous manner.
And they play, and it translates to the field.
Yep.
John, you want to take a break? I guess that's a yes.
That is a yes.
All right, we'll be right back.
Don't be no more dissing Al Melgard. Darn it.
You are listening to Armchair Experts on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network from the John DeVita Broadcast Center. And now, back to Jim and Rich.
All right, we're back.
Can we talk about something interesting now?
Yeah, you want to talk more Al Melgard?
Al Melgard is more interesting than the Bulls are.
I think Kevin. I think we need to suggest
Or
to Kevin.
Slim Whitman.
I could do that. We could do that. I think we should have an. I think we should go all Al Melgard all the time.
I tell you, I love Al Melgard. I just love the name.
Yeah.
Talking
about NBA.
Stuff here, Jim.
Talking about NBA.
Oh, geez, he wants to go back to the NBA,
and how
which he doesn't like,
and how we become disjointed from the game.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at this mock draft, can you tell me who Dante Exum is?
No.
Okay, he's a shooting guard from Australia.
Oh, wow, no wonder they got to go all the way to Australia for players now.
And how about Clint Capella?
I don't know.
He's a power forward from Switzerland.
Is he related to A Cappella?
He's related to Al Capella.
Okay.
Yeah. And I there's a couple of names I've looked at and I say, oh, I remember him. And it's only because I've kind of kept half an eye on Michigan State since Dana was
Oh, that's true. You
Dana was. I follow the football team more, but I mean, I look at Gary Harris. Projected to go number 11 with Denver right now. He's small to play the 2, but he's tough and defensive-minded. If he rediscovers his shooting stroke, he'll be a steal, according to the comments. And taken at 13, the other possibility. And he may actually be a good fit there, considering all the talk about Kevin Love. Adrian Payne, 6'10", senior, is forecast to go to the Timberwolves. And he's a senior, so he's.
Who's he? Where's he from? Michigan State.
He's from Michigan State.
You just like those Michigan State guys.
Well,
Jim. There are a lot of
it brings a lot of peace in the Northern House and the Southern House
There are a lot of wonderfully talented. These guys are probably wonderfully talented basketball players. The one thing though, there's two things I'd say. A lot of them are way overexposed, even though we don't know them. I think they're overexposed. Maybe I should say overhyped. The other thing is, I don't think that and we talked about this briefly before, I don't think that the basketball smarts are there for a lot of them. They're great athletes. They play the game well, but I don't know how well at a thinking level they play the game, a lot of them. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them. A lot of them make it on pure talent, and I don't think that's the bottom line.
No, they don't. They feel their talent will carry them through.
Right.
And it's not.
Thanks,
and I guess the thing that
I
guess the thing that bothers me the most about the game, although we saw quite a different. We saw a basketball team beat Miami.
That was great. Now
it's not it doesn't become a team game. It's not a team game anymore. San Antonio plays team basketball.
Well, I think the Heat plays team basketball too, but I think that
Yeah.
you're probably talking about, I know Pat Riley had some things. We talked about this a little bit. Had some things to say. He's not. Doesn't sound like he wants to take a wrecking ball to the Heat, which makes sense. They've been to the finals 4 years in a row. I think one of the things that I saw, LeBron James's comments. This was what I saw and heard on one of the press conferences he's had prior to Game 5, where he just talked about being in a good place in his life and whatever other comments he made. I'm thinking that's sort of a message when the rest of the team hears this, that the hunger for this championship for LeBron, who's the top player on the team and the leader of the team, didn't seem to be there.
Isn't there?
And that's a problem. That would need to be regenerated. The other thing is, it seemed like Bosch had some complaints. He seemed to be thinking that he was lost in the shuffle.
I think he has been since he's been there.
And Dwayne, I don't think Dwayne Wade physically is probably anywhere close to the player that he was. So, I hear what Riley is saying, but again, you know what? I'll tell you, with the salary cap, Jim, in most of these sports, it is if you're in Pat Riley's or Gar Forman or Stan Bowman's place, or whoever the GM or whoever makes those decisions, you are in a really tough spot, because if you have really good players like you have a LeBron James and you have a couple other guys who are high-priced guys, and you think, we're right there. Why are we going to wreck this whole thing? We're right there. Maybe you feel the guys aren't that old yet where you need to jettison some of them. But what are we going to do when we have limited money? How are we going to fill this whole thing in? And
Right.
that becomes a real tricky game.
That becomes a tricky game in how are you going to convince guys to come down and play for a smaller amount? Unless you get guys who say, well, I've never had a chance to be on a championship team, here's my chance.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my chance.
Yeah, you could hopefully.
And there
have
are
that.
guys who went for that.
Yeah, there's always going to be.
There's guys who say, well, this is the only, I'm 34 years old, this is my only opportunity. I've never had the opportunity before.
There's, that's where you realize there's a big difference between saying, I've been in the league for a while and I really want to have an NBA championship, and really meaning that you've been in the league for a while and you want to have one. Because when you just say it, but really the overriding consideration is the money, well, then you really don't mean it. But if you're willing to make a little financial sacrifice to get onto with a team that you think has a chance to go all the way, that's a whole different story.
Mm-hmm.
And I respect that a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm wondering. Here's the other thing. Going back to what we originally started this NBA chit chat about, if Carmelo Anthony came here, now how is who becomes the team leader? Is it still Rose? If he could, I don't know. Well, Joakim Noah is probably taking that role.
I think is the leader. I don't think Rose has the personality to be a leader.
Well,
to be that. And I'm saying personality, meaning just his mental and his attitude. Yeah, he can be the leader when you hand him the ball and he does his thing on the court.
Mm-hmm.
When he's healthy, yes, you can look at him and say he's the leader. I guess I'm talking about, and maybe it might be an overblown thing in a professional thing, that spirit, that mental attitude.
Jim Kelly always says that Rashaan Salam and Tim Worley were fumblers with the Bears because they were dopers. Now, my take is that Carmelo Anthony likes to smoke the weed as well. Now, does that
NBA players do that?
Now, does that no? But I mean, how does that? And I'm going to say this: I think it negatively affects you. It may not affect your performance, but I think it affects your attitude, in the sense that, well, I'm cool and laid back now because I smoke my reefer. I'm feeling good, as opposed to a guy who's. And you know what? There are guys who are drinkers, but drink doesn't seem to have exactly the same effect as dope smokers. So I'm thinking, would you want a guy like Carmelo because that's his thing. That's at least that's my take on it. I could be totally wrong.
You could be totally wrong, and how are you going to get a guy who's as straight-laced as Tibbs react to that?
Well, you got Joakim Noah, and I think Joakim Noah is the exception to the rule, because I don't think Joke is like a straight Mr. Straight.
No, I don't think so.
But he is a heck of a competitor.
I forgot about that.
And I think maybe that's the little bit of the connection between Joakim and Carmelo, because it's Joakim is the guy that seems to be heavily talking to Carmelo, recruiting him, trying to to get him to buy into this idea of coming to the Bulls. Mm-hmm. So, but then do you start some kind of a culture on the team that you don't want to start?
Yeah, we went through that. The Bulls went through that years ago.
Mm-hmm. All right, tell me about it.
You talked about watching the guys buying their stuff outside at Gate 3.5.
No question about it. I watched it, and I was from me to John away from it. So that was, and John's sitting 7-8 feet from us.
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
It definitely happened, and wouldn't like to see it happen again.
Hey, I know Sports Jimmy's been kind of dejected since the Stanley Cup.
Well, I thought you were going to invite him on to the show.
Oh,
that might brighten him up a little bit.
Well, I'll leave that for you to handle sometime here. But you can give him a little good news that somebody who began his career with the Blackhawks is going into the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Who's that?
Dominic Hasek.
Oh, he does. Yeah,
he was two. I forgot it was 2 years with the Hawks. He was Murray Bannerman's backup.
Interesting.
Was it Bannerman or Belfour?
Probably was Belfour. I think Bannerman was gone by that time.
Yeah.
Now, that brings up an interesting thought, though, too, Jim. You could say, "Oh man, look at the Hawks. They got rid of a Hall of Famer like they had a guy like Hasek." But sometimes teams are in a spot where the number one goalie usually plays the bulk of the games, and Eddie Belfour was excellent, probably a great goalie. And you had a new guy in Hasek, and you weren't going to just jettison Belfour to bring Hasek in. So the Hawks were pretty much forced to let him go. And so I don't know if they traded him or how he left. But
spent a lot of time with Buffalo.
Sometimes you're forced to get rid of a good player because you have no room for him. And that happens not just here in Chicago, but it happens all over.
Won a couple of cups with Detroit.
Yeah, Hasek was a great goalie. Yeah.
Who else? There are a couple of other interesting names. Mike Modano.
Mike Modano. Is he still coaching, or is he involved as a GM or something?
He's involved in some capacity, and I can't remember what. I looked at this last night. Peter Forsberg. And did he play a little bit with us at the end, or am I thinking of somebody else? No, I think you're thinking of someone else.
Yeah.
Rob Blake.
Okay.
Also, Pat Burns, who was a 3-time winner of the Adams Trophy for Coach of the Year in the Builder category, and somebody that we probably all booed at one time in the stadium.
Who's that?
Bill McCrary, a referee.
Yeah,
we probably all booed him at one time or another.
Those are some great picks, and congratulations to those well-deserving people.
And in that ceremony in November, Pat Foley is going to go in as the winner of the I can't think of the award, but the broadcast, equivalent to whatever the. Like the
Johnny Most Award or something like that, basketball-wise,
or whatever, But he's going to be a Hall of Famer too.
Okay, well, that's well deserved as well.
Hawks are the early favorites to win the 15 Stanley Cup.
What's the odds?
7.5 to 1.
Okay.
Bruins are 8 to 1. Pittsburgh is 9 to 1. The Kings and the Blues are 10 to 1.
I just go back to when we had the remote at Fannie and Schmoes. People, I didn't have a bad reaction, but they were like, disappointed reaction, I could say, when I said that the Hawks wouldn't repeat. And I firmly believe that when you play a 80-some game schedule, and then you have to go through 4 playoff series to win the cup, It's just tough. It's tough. You're talking about almost what would 80? You're talking about between a quarter, well, about 30% of a season if you play 28 games. More beyond the season that would be to win the cup. That's a big hill to climb. So I would say the Kings are the team. The Hawks were the team behind the 8 ball this year. The Kings are going to be in the same position next year.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that the Hawks, we talked about this a little bit, Jim. A lot of people say, well, what are we going to do to get over the hump? The Kings beat us. Well, we were 1 goal away from going to the Stanley Cup Finals. We could have easily, had we scored first in that overtime game to decide who was going to go to the Stanley Cup, we could be celebrating another Stanley Cup champion right now.
Very easily.
So I don't think... I hear people say, well, you know what, Kane is, not Kane, who's Sharp is tradable. I've heard Brent Seabrook's name, and I'm like, you know what, no, maybe Sharp would be tradable under the right circumstances. I would say not to me. Not saying it's not going to happen, but there's no way I would break up the best defensive probably pair in the league in Keith and Seabrook.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about? And what we had talked about briefly, and I think it's probably pretty accurate, is that the Kings were able to take us in that series because they had some significant jumps from some of their young players. And I think the key to us overtaking them next year, or whoever else is going to be competitive, is for some of our younger players to take a similar step.
The art, and there's a good article in the Sports Illustrated talking about the Kings, and essentially Suter's plan was to throw the Blackhawks game right back at them. And they happened to do it better.
They did it really well.
Yeah. And I mean, that was the thing. And I mean, it was surprisingly, when Suter was hired, they got a lot of bad press when they hired him as the coach out there.
Yeah, I never thought, he was our coach, and the Sutter brothers all were tough, hard-digging hockey players.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they were all great intellects. And when you see Daryl Sutter interviewed, but he, obviously he knows his hockey, and to his credit, I think the biggest test of a coach is when you have the horses, and you are expected to win, and you do it. So he passed that test more than once, and so my hat's off to Daryl Sutter.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think he did a wonderful job out there.
Sometimes coaches, just get enamored with how bright they are. And I think Daryl Sutter just sticks to what he sees, sees what he's got and works with that and doesn't try to do too much. I think you could put Joel Quenneville in the same category. The only thing that always interests me about Quenneville is, and when we were kids, Jim, and you had the $1 million line, or you had the scooter line, or I think later we had, was it the MPH line? I think
we had the MPH,
Mons Papin
Mons Papin and Hull.
Yeah,
we also had the RPM,
line. So we were used to, as Chicago fans, seeing the lines sort of stay together, and Quenneville likes to, mix and match, and actually, I have no problem with that. It's just not what I was used to initially. But I think both of those coaches do an excellent job.
Just kind of going into that, I saw an article here a couple of weeks ago. Chuck Noll, who was the head coach of the Steelers during the birth of what really has become the modern era for the Steelers, passed away.
Yeah,
at the age of 82.
Right.
I knew that the Steelers were never really good prior to that.
They were terrible
point.
Usually.
Said if you consider the last 42 years, 7 losing seasons and 26 playoffs appearances in the era since Chuck Noll was hired. Prior to that point, they were 96 games below 500 and only had 7 winning seasons. prior to Chuck Knoll being hired.
I-
Do you realize who they were trying to hire before they hired Chuck Knoll?
Dave Wannstedt. No, I'm kidding. Dave Wannstedt, was it? No, I don't know. Who were they trying to hire?
Joe Paterno.
Oh, that's right, Joe Paterno. That's right.
Which, I'm sorry I didn't have the sound bit ready, but I can, come close to Paterno going, I can't hear what you're saying.
Joe Paterno. Yeah, they offered him big money, and he almost did come, but then I guess he had second thoughts and stayed where he was at.
Right.
Now, Chuck Knoll comes from the Paul Brown group.
He comes from the Paul Brown group, and essentially at that point he was an assistant to Shula at Baltimore.
Yeah. And
So
Shula's also a Browns guy.
Shula's a Browns guy.
Yeah. Now Chuck Knoll was he? He was one of the what they used to call the running guards. The guy, the guys who used to
I think
bring
so.
the plays in from
Yeah.
the sideline.
Yeah.
Chuck Knoll, his famous thing when he cut a player was, "Now go and do your life's work."
Right.
That was his big thing.
Right.
But, we talked about this a little bit.
And it was interesting too. Here's a comment. You talk about him being one of the messenger guards. In his 1973 story for SI, longtime Pittsburgh writer and broadcaster Myron Cope wrote that Knoll was once described by Jim Brown as the only player who could score 100% on Paul Brown's playbook examinations.
Yeah, I believe that. Now, Chuck Knoll, though, we talked about this a little bit, and it's an interesting conversation, and I'm not trying to disrespect Chuck Knoll in any way or his memory. But when the Steelers, coinciding with hiring Chuck Knoll, had a bunch of phenomenal drafts. So he had very, very good players to work with. And to his credit, they came up with 4 Super Bowl winners.
Yeah. He's the only coach to have 4 Super Bowls winners.
However, after that group sort of faded away, his success was, let's just say, spotty. And I think they only appeared his last, let's say, I'll just say throughout numbers, and you can get the accurate numbers, but his last 10 or 11, 12 years, they only had 2 playoff teams, and I don't think his record was very, I don't even know if it was above 500.
I don't know. I mean, he did wind up with that. You think of he did wind up with a good record. I mean, it was enough, obviously.
His overall record was good.
Yeah, it was obviously well enough to be a member of Pro Football Hall of Fame. And here's a picture of the class that year when he went into the Hall of Fame. Dan Fouts, Larry Little, Walter Payton,
Okay.
and Bill Walsh.
Wow, that's a
That's a pretty impressive group.
that's an impressive class.
That's
no
a pretty
doubt.
impressive group. And I mean, your comment about cutting players or preparing players for life after football. A great quote in here. Knoll did not live inside the football cocoon. He liked good food and better wine. He flew his own airplane and listened to Baroque and classical music. He encouraged players to prepare for life after football. Find your life's pursuit, he would tell them.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And there's a nice article here that Rocky Blyer wrote about him, talking about the last time he saw him, and he got together with Andy Russell, and they wanted to see Chuck, and when he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, his wife became very protective of him in his interactions, and they knew something was wrong that day when they saw him. But they talked about a couple of he talked about a couple of things here that the way he talked about his teaching moments. He said he loved teaching moments, but he was not an orator or a motivator. He said, it's not my job to hold your hand. It's my job to take motivated people and show them how to become better.
That's true. I agree.
He said, I recall one week in 1978 after we lost one game and snuck by in the next. Things weren't clicking, and we needed a jolt from Chuck, a boot up the ass. So he pulled us together after practice and said, let me tell you a story about 2 monks who were on a journey. Sometime during their journey, they stopped at a clearing, and in the clearing is a stream. On one side of the stream is a fair maiden trying to cross. And the first monk, without any hesitation, picks up the fair maiden and carries her across and sets her down. The two monks continue on in silence. Sometime later on their journey, they stop at another clearing. The second monk says to the first monk, "You picked up that maiden. Don't you know it's against our beliefs and our religion to touch a person of the opposite sex?" The first monk said, "I set her down back there, but you carried her all the way here." And he finished by saying, "I'll see you guys tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. We broke out of the huddle and walked back to the locker room, and the guys were going, "What did he just say?"
I was thinking the same thing.
Eventually, I figured it out. Our failures are back there. We move on.
Okay.
Which I think is a great philosophy. John's agreeing with me. You're looking at me like, what are you talking about?
No, I was still
You're
thinking about that
you're
story.
back to El Melgar.
You know what? Those guys were pretty. Those guys were pretty deep thinkers if they got that one. Jim Page used to have a. I don't know if did you ever know Jim? He was a teacher at
Yeah.
Ridgewood after
Yeah.
we left. Jim
Yeah.
Jim used to have a sign in his office that said, "Forget about yesterday. It's over. Don't worry about tomorrow. It hasn't arrived yet. Do a master job today." So that's sort of in line with what Noel was saying there.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think, Jim?
Yeah.
Hey, by the way, John, Jim, the other day we're texting back and forth, and he says something about, my phone's ringing. Let's see who's calling.
It's our caller.
Should be interesting. Hey, we have a caller calling into the
Hello,
show.
caller.
It's, okay. At any rate, we're talking about the U.S. soccer team, and Jim says something to the effect that we need to really be known on the world stage. We need a one-named player, like Pele or Ronaldo or whatever, or who's the other guy? Maradona.
Maradona. I don't know.
So I said I texted him back and said, "How about Sports Jimmy?" And then he texted me back, and appropriately enough, and I don't think you've met this gentleman, but there's a guy at the library, Jim Matthews. We call him Jimmy Sunshine. And at a very late age, not very late, but Jim is in his late 60s. He's gotten into soccer, and he loves soccer. So Jim's response was, "Oh, how about the nickname? How about Sunshine?"
How about Sunshine?
So one of our new aged soccer superstars, we should be named Sunshine.
We need that. That's what's going to make this country a soccer power, a single name player.
Well, if this
I
country becomes a soccer power, we're in big trouble.
I had to laugh. I stopped at stopped into a Fifth Third branch. I was getting some information, and I talked to the banker, and he introduced himself as and his business card even said it. His name was Epps. Epps. I said, "You must be pretty good if you only go by a single name."
Let me ask you this: when you said Epps, I don't know what it rang a bell. I was thinking about, and none of those guys are named Epps. But can you name any of the ball players? The famous game between Texas Western and Kentucky, where they had the 5 black starters, the Miners did. Can you name any one of those guys?
Any one of the starters?
Any one of those starters?
No.
Yeah. The only one that I could come up with was David Lattin. I don't know if you remember him or not.
No.
But he was a big center for them.
The only person that I can remember that was involved with that game, and he wasn't a starter, was I think Pat Riley. He was on the Kentucky bench.
Yeah, well, Pat Riley was on that Kentucky team. Yeah,
He was,
right.
and he wasn't a starter.
No.
I don't think he was a starter.
Well, I don't know about that, Jim. I'm not sure. Not sure about that. Although Pat Riley did have a very good college career, and he was a 11-year NBA journeyman. So, anyway, Brian, you know what? Did you see? And
We got about a minute.
Got a minute. Talk about the glamorous life of a professional athlete. The Bears signed a guy by the name of, is it Michael Ola? He was with the Dolphins last year. And I read an article in the paper a couple weeks about Michael Ola. And this guy, he could have been a French foreign legionnaire. He played with a couple of teams in, what was the name of that football league? Was the Continental Football League they had a few years ago?
Yeah.
That were, okay.
Yeah.
Played with a team in Virginia there, and I think another one in Louisiana. Played for an arena team. Then I think the connection he has with the Bears, he played for Trestman in Montreal. And when he had an opportunity to come to the States, he was thinking about signing with the Bears because of that connection. But the Dolphins offered him more money. Now, not big money, but more money. So he took it. And that didn't work out in Miami, and now he's in Bears camp. And I'm thinking, here's a guy who must really want to play professional football. Because far from being glamorous, I mean, he's been all over the place, and he's been in every pro league that I could think of. You know who was sort of like that, Jim, was, I'm not going to be able, Frank, you know him. He played for the Thunder, I think, and then went to the Arena League.
Yeah, he went to Ridgewood.
Frank
Trenadu.
Frank Trenadu, my understanding.
He played for Arizona in the Arena Bowl.
I mean, my understanding was that his family sacrificed big time for him just to even have the shot to play any kind of pro ball.
Yeah, just to play any kind of pro ball.
So it's not always as glamorous as it seems, especially for those guys who are just trying to hold a spot on a team.
Yeah.
So,
I think we're getting no, because I got a couple of things I want to get. John's going talk. There were a couple of things I wanted to get into, but I think it may go too long. John
saying go.
John says go. Okay. Interesting article here. How Michigan's football greed alienated fans, and how it should be a lesson to all colleges. This spring, Michigan Athletic Department admitted what many had long suspected. Student football ticket sales are down, way down, from about 21,000 in 2012 to 13 to 14,000 this year. The department has blamed cell phones, high-definition TV, and student apathy sweeping the nation. All real problems for sure. But they don't explain how Michigan alienated 40% of their students in just 2 years, and their parents too. How did Michigan do it? By forgetting why we love college football. Dave Brandon, the former Domino's Pizza CEO turned Michigan athletic director. By the way, this was written by John U. Bacon, and it came off of the postgame.com blog recently. Dave Brandon, the former Domino's Pizza CEO turned Michigan athletic director, has often cited the difficulty of using cell phones at Michigan Stadium as the biggest challenge we have here. But Michigan students were asked in a recent survey to rank 7 factors that would influence their decision to buy season tickets. Cell phone coverage was 7th.
Mm-hmm.
What did they rank first? Being able to sit with their friends. Brandon did away from that last year with a new student seating policy. Instead of seating the students by class, with the freshmen in the end zone and the seniors toward the 50, as Michigan had done for decades, last year it was first come, first serve.
Okay.
And if you wanted to sit all together, you had better walk in together. They also raised the price of tickets from $195 for 6 games to $295 for 7 games. The idea was to encourage students to come early and come often. Thousands of students responded by not coming at all. Greed.
I guess I tell you, if I couldn't have sat with you or some of the other screw offs at the basketball games when we were in high school, I would have.
You wouldn't have.
I wouldn't have gone
either.
I would have been disappointed.
And another issue about money, and maybe this is one we should talk about. We should have gotten into when we were talking baseball here. And maybe we'll save this one for next time, and then we'll get out of here in a minute. Interesting article on Fangraphs talking about what should a Jeff Samardzija extension cost, because he flat out rejected 5 years at $85 million.
You know, there's another one of those tough decisions for GMs that I have to say. You know, they're going to get criticized because somewhere down the road or immediately. If I was making that decision, you have to be weighing, okay, Jeff Samardzija's having a really good year this year.
Yeah.
So you're happy with that.
Well,
but his prior, prior record has been,
it's not translating. So. It's not translating in the one.
So
in the one.
Why are you going to spend? And what did you say? 85 for how long?
5 years.
So as somebody told me that translated to $17.5 million or something like that per year.
17.
You're gonna spend $17 million a year on Jeff Samardzija. So you really well.
And what's even funnier is he wants 120 over 6.
They've put themselves in this position, though, Jim, because now they're at the point where if you lose Samardzija, who's at least a major league pitcher, how much do you have left? Not all that much, and and Hamill will probably go as well. But so you put yourself in the position now, a sort of a no-win position, because there's no way you should be spending that much money on Jeff Samardzija. But at the same time, all of a sudden, maybe it's dawning on them, well, maybe we should keep this guy because it looks like we might be playing a little bit better baseball, and maybe there is something.
Maybe this is the piece to build around.
So they've put themselves in this position, but there's no way that I'm spending paying him $17.5 million, or what is it, $20 million over 6 years?
Yeah, they wanted 20. He was. I read that somewhere.
That's ridiculous. And you know what kills me? The guy that they keep comparing him to in the papers, contract-wise, is Homer Bailey. I don't know Homer Bailey from Homer Simpson. And you were telling me that he's having a very bad year. I don't know what kind of year he's had in the past that would engender him getting a contract of the type that he's got. I mean, has he been that good a pitcher?
I've not been impressed with him, and I'm certainly not impressed with him this year. But it's kind of interesting. Fangraphs had a whole thing in here kind of comparing both pitchers with a lot of their peripheral numbers. And I know one number that just jumped off the page, and it is your favorite stat.
The BABIP?
The BABIP.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, Jeff Samardzija's BABIP is 298. Homer Bailey's is 301.
Jim, the thing I was going to say is that the owners, though, themselves have gone crazy. Because, if you have Babe Ruth or Michael Jordan or Hulk Hogan, guys who actually put fans in seats, the paying customer. And I understand that there's big TV money and all that involved, but I think the big test is still the live audience in terms of star power now I'm talking about. Because anybody can flip on the TV and watch for a few minutes. But the people, those guys were guys that I think it was provable they actually put fans in the seats. So those guys were worth whatever. Now, you're talking about why would you pay? I understand that you might say you might need them for your ball club, but why would you pay Homer Bailey or Jeff Samardzija, who, there's, now, Ohio is not that far from us. Cincinnati is a Midwest team. I'm like, Homer who? I thought he was a relief pitcher. Why are you paying this guy who nobody knows outside of Cincinnati that kind of money? Or why would you pay Jeff Samardzija that kind of money? I think the owners have totally gone off the tracks. There's probably, maybe not even, a handful of players in all of Major League Baseball that fans would actually say, okay, such and such team is coming to town. I want to see such and such player. I'm going to the ball game. Those guys are worth the money because that's a provable thing. These other guys, I understand the concept. You're trying to make a team better or you're trying to improve a team. But the bottom line is those guys are not worth that kind of money.
No. There's not the attraction that we have to go to something because somebody is there. I'm just happened to glance down, talking about going to see somebody, seeing a ball game just because of somebody being an attraction. I just happen to be looking at the Sun-Times here from today, and on this date in baseball in 1998, I happened to be at this particular game.
Oh, really?
Sammy Sosa tied the Major League record for homers in a month, hitting his 18th of June in the first inning of the Cubs' 7-6 loss to Detroit. I happened to be at that game in Detroit.
I believe he tied, was it Rudy York's record?
He matched the mark set by Rudy York in August of 1937 and broke Willie Mays' NL record set in August of 1965.
And I think he ended up with 20.
20,
for the
20 or... Yeah, 20, I think, for the month.
It was 20.
Yeah.
Which is a phenomenal month.
Yeah, but very rare I can glance down and see something. But there was a guy who was a draw.
I would say Sammy Sosa was definitely a draw.
All right, John, I think we're running out of things to talk about. You want to start the meeting?
Let's go. No, we could go.
I got nothing else.
Jim wants to have another cookie, that's all. And he can't eat it on the air. All right.
All right, we had a lot of fun again today. Hope you enjoyed it. We will catch you again next time. We are out of here.
You sure you want to go, Jim?
Yeah, I'll take off.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. We'll go over to Fanny and Schmoes.
All right.
Have a cup of coffee and something there.
There we go.
All right.
You have been listening to Armchair Experts from the John DeVita Broadcast Center on the Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network with Jim Leon and Rich Massaro. This broadcast was directed by John DeVita. And our executive producer of Windy City Hometown Entertainment Network is Mr. John Shikanda. This broadcast was pre-recorded on Tuesday, June the 24th, the year 2014. Until next time, be safe and thanks for listening.